strategies to help you become more productive, profitable, create progress, and lead a ridiculously fulfilling life. Welcome to the Susan Sly Project with your host, the woman who wants you to succeed, Susan Sly.
Well, hello, and I just want to acknowledge you wherever you are in the world that you're here listening to the show. And I know by virtue of you making the decision to listen that you are a person who is looking for more. You're on that quest. You're always seeking personal excellence. You either have a business that you want to scale and grow, or you're contemplating having a business, and how do you have the courage to do that? And my guest today started a massive 7-figure company when he was 13 years old. Now, at 18, he has already done more in 5 years than a lot of people do in their entire career. He's absolutely amazing, and I feel so blessed that I get to interview such phenomenal people. And he is someone that I have been looking forward to interviewing and sort of hack into his mind for a while now. So I'll be bringing him out in just a moment. But first, just a couple of quick announcements. So what are you doing on September 29th? September 29th, I am going to be doing Sales Nirvana here in Phoenix. And that day is going to be workshop style. And I am an NLP certified coach and trainer. And I'm going to be taking you through persuasive selling. And ultimately, here's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what your product or service is. It's about how you make people feel. And when they interact with you, whether it's through video, through social media, through your website, landing pages, through the copy you write, how do you want that person to feel? You want them to feel like they want to do business with you. So I'm going to be taking you through things like the perfect NLP sales formula, which you can use for presentations. We're going to be teaching modeling, mirroring. I also have Emmy award-winning actor Rael Andrews coming in to teach you video hacks. It's going to be incredible. We're also going to have a huge digital marketing theme. So how do you amplify your vertical using digital? It's going to be amazing. Tickets are selling fast. So it's salesnirvana.com. That's how you get your tickets. Also, just so you know, that I'm constantly providing great, amazing, free content for people just in terms of really how do you take your business and scale. And so you can always connect with me on susansly.com. I don't spam you, but I do mail you usually once a week with some great stuff. So check it out. And my subscribers actually get discounts to all the classes I teach and events. It's really cool. So do check that out. I do a Facebook Live every Monday. Susan Sly Live on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Susan Sly. I'm on LinkedIn, Susan Sly. And on Twitter, I don't own Susan Sly, unfortunately. It's Susan_Sly, so tweet at me, whatever. I love to hear from you. And if you have an idea for a show or a great guest, go to susansly.com. We have a great chat bot on there, and you can chat at it, and I will get that message, which is awesome. So check it out. My guest today is incredible. He is an 18-year-old serial entrepreneur from Sherwood, Oregon. He got his start when he was 7 years old selling items he found at garage sales on eBay. Talk about, seizing that opportunity. At age 13, he founded his first company, HoopSwag, and that company is still growing strong. And while he was in high school, he grew the company to more than $1 million in annual revenue and employed upwards of 30 people. And so now he's graduated. Look out. What is he going to do? So my guest today is Brennan Agronoff. So Brennan, it is amazing to have you here. I'm super excited.
Thanks for having me on, Susan. I'm really excited.
So, okay, Brennan, this is like the $1 million question, literally. When did you know you were an entrepreneur? When did you know? I have a friend, Jeff Combs, and he says psychologically unemployable. When did you know that was you?
I think it clicked for me when I was probably 7 or 8. Like I was talking about when I first started, I would go sell stuff from garage sales and I'd go on eBay and sell it. And literally the first thing I sold, something like inside of me kind of clicked. And it was so cool to me, this concept of, in my case, it was like e-commerce, but it was so cool to me that I could buy something and then somehow do something to it, and someone else anywhere in the world is going to end up paying more for that. And just the fact that I don't ever have to talk to them, I don't ever have to know them, but I can still somehow get them a product in their hand that they needed. There was something so cool and surreal about that clicked. And after that, I just kind of kept following that burning fire inside of me. And so I think it was probably when I was 7 or 8.
That's incredible. It's like this, it's this knowing, right? I was 11 when I started my first business, so I was like way more ancient than 7. But I totally get it. There's this point of understanding where it's like, ooh, that I want to be in control and I want to create. When going back to the eBay selling, because eBay is making a huge revival now. They put a lot of money into their branding. If someone said, you know what, I'd like to be an eBay seller now, what advice would you give to that person?
I think the biggest piece of advice I could give for anyone on eBay, it's really just be unique with what you're doing. And if you go and search a YouTube video that's like how to make money on eBay, you have to assume there's a million other people watching that video. And so that is even when I was doing it probably almost 10 years ago, which is really weird to say. The thing that was making it work for me is a lot of the flipping and stuff I would sell was stuff that no one else had access to. And since I'm in Oregon, a lot of that was like Nike clothing. And so that was something that was like geographically unique to me that no one else really could get because you can't get the same stuff that you get because we have Nike and Adidas and Under Armour all headquartered here. And so in my case, I was selling products that no one else had, but were still in demand. And so if you go online and try to sell some product that 10,000 other people are selling, you're going to have a lot harder of a time selling it.
And so being unique is key. And I know that has been one of your entrepreneurial themes is this, I want to be different. And we're going to get into this mindset because it's fascinating to me that, here you are, you and I were talking and you're like, I'm so glad to be done in high school because I have like so much I want to do. But most people can't even conceptualize starting a business regardless, but you're juggling school and life and company employees and stuff like that. We will get into that because people listening, they're probably like, ask him that. And I will. We'll get there. Let me ask you this whole concept of creativity. How important is that for you as an entrepreneur?
I think about this a lot, and I really do think that at the end of the day, at least 99% of my success can be like boiled down to creativity. Like I find in my company, even in my life, like I'm most successful when I'm creating something unique. And so that's something, it's extremely difficult. Like it's the hardest thing I have to do, but it's also what has given me my success. And I figured that out sort of that, like that's the driver behind all of it is when I'm out there creating and doing that, whether or not, it doesn't really matter if you're making progress because anything you're doing is making progress. But anytime I'm in like creative mode, that's when stuff starts to click.
Yeah. And that, let me ask you, because when you're in, for me, and I could be totally wrong for your experience, for me, high school was painful. I was just like, I was done before I started. I skipped 2 grades because I just wanted to be out of there. And it was so painful because I was so creative and I felt like it was just like there was the teacher giving me information. I was great at regurgitating that information, but I just wanted to create. I wanted to do. How did you juggle high school and starting HoopSwag?
Yeah, so when I entered high school, HoopSwag, like it was an idea I had over the summer, and so it wasn't anything like too massive at that point. I really didn't know what was going to happen with it, and really at that point, I wasn't even considering it like, oh, I have a company. It was more like, oh, I'm doing this for fun. And when I got to high school, like I had always been like ahead in school, like I was 2 years ahead in math, and so I had taken extra classes. So like when I entered high school, I think I had almost a year of high school done, and so my goal was like, I kind of knew at that point, I was like, high school, I understand the concept of it and why we're learning this stuff, but I was like, I want out of here. Like, it's just not for me. And so I kind of did everything I could to minimize my time in the classroom, I guess. And so whether that was like, my parents were really good about it too. I got really lucky in that department. So I also did like play high school sports, though I wasn't like a complete weirdo. Like I was still like a social high schooler, and so there was some sort of balance there. Like you have to go to school to be able to play sports, and you still want to hang out with friends and that sort of thing. And what I kind of figured out I had to do was like when I was doing something, whether that was my schoolwork, my work, whatever it was, like I had to devote 100% of my brain to that because I figured out that if I didn't like focus on that, I'm going to end up somewhere on Twitter, like I get really, really distracted easily, and I figured out that like to be productive and be able to get anything done, I really had to make myself just like focus, and it was a lot of like mental self-discipline, but just focus on whatever my task like at hand was, whether or not I liked it, that could have been doing homework, but really just like giving myself the discipline to like focus on one thing, I think is sort of what helped me balance it all. Like it's very hard to explain how to go about balancing it all because I just kind of did it at the time. It wasn't like a big elaborate plan. But looking back, it was definitely like, okay, I have X, Y, and Z to get done. Like, how is that going to get done? Because it has to get done.
And that's the $1 million question right there. How? Great entrepreneurs know there's always a way, right, Brennan? Like it's
exactly.
you figure it out, and it doesn't mean you love problems, but problems aren't the same. And I know people who, sadly they just think that things are a certain way. I personally believe like there's always a way. That's why every morning I take that time to journal. Like how can I make an extra like $25,000 this week? How can I? And it's always this question, right? And it leaves you so open. How old were you when HoopSwag started to scale and it was time to bring in employees? And how did you have help? Who else was involved? Because clearly, going to school, but having the company still running, how did that all pan out?
Yeah, so by the time I was about 15 years old, I basically had this equipment in my garage that I had since I was 13, and I would go out there every day, and I would like physically make the socks, I'd print the orders, and I'd ship them. And by the time I was 15, I realized I was spending most of my time doing that, and so much to an extent that I had very little time for school, and I had very little time to actually grow the company. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, this is really weird. Like, I'm 15, and I think I need an employee. I was just like, that it didn't make sense to me because I was like, can you even hire anyone younger than you? And then so at that point I was like, okay, the financials made sense. Definitely nerve-wracking hiring an employee, but what I actually ended up doing was we ended up, and this is still who works for us today actually, we ended up hiring a bunch of like part-time moms because we only need them like 3-4 hours in the morning. And so I actually still to this day employ, it's a bunch of my friends' moms. Like from a town that we live in, and they all go make the socks in the morning, and it's great because they like get to talk about mom stuff and drama and all that stuff. So I actually ended up hiring my friends' moms.
I love that.
It's definitely a good story. But no, that was when I was like, okay, I have to build my plate up so much that I can't handle it, and then dish it off the stuff that's like repeatable, and you can automate. And it was really weird at 15 to be able to do that, but it was like something that was crucial for me because now I'm freed up to actually go grow the company and do strategic things versus sitting there making socks all day.
That's amazing. The fact that you have you're hiring all these part-time moms and you're employing your friends' moms, it's contributing to the economy. They're getting to do something after kid drop off that, it's fun for them, but it's not their whole day. That's incredible. And just so everyone knows, HoopSwag, let's talk about the company and what it does. So, custom socks, which are really, really cool. Tell everyone, I've been all through the website, but in your words, how do you describe the company?
Yeah, so HoopSwag is basically a sock customization company. We import white socks from overseas, and we have warehouses and facilities here that we actually print onto the socks. And the cool part about it is we stock one inventory SKU, and we're able to print unlimited things because every order is made to order. And that's another really cool thing, for me at least, to think that every order is getting handmade by these moms in our factories. But yeah, so we basically have over 800 different designs you can choose from that are preset. And then we also do a bunch of work with charities. We work a lot on fundraising with teams, organizations, schools to do custom socks that they can go sell. Sort of it's a better version of selling popcorn. And so we do that. And then we also work with a bunch of high school basketball teams. I think last year we had over 250 teams nationwide outfitted with our socks. The options for socks are basically endless. We just help people find a use for them.
Yeah, and I'm excited too because one of your clients is a massive multinational, and we were gifted with these socks, and it was so cool. And they were like telling your story, and then another mutual friend of ours is like, "Oh my gosh, you have to meet Brennan." It's like then someone else is like, "You have to meet Brennan. You guys are going to have so much to talk about, right?" And it's like and I know you're just getting started. Like if you could envision. And we're going to talk about, because Brennan has other things that he does as well, but if you could envision your company 5 years from now, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I think it's really hard to project that far out, but the one thing I know is going to be a part of it that I really see even in the near future is this concept of like customized quick manufacturing. Basically, like the ability to customize products and have them at your doorstep in like 3 days. There's not many people that are able to do that right now just because it takes a ton of infrastructure and the logistics are very confusing. So going forward with the sock company, I really think that being able to say an event happens or there's some sort of huge thing on social media, being able to crank out a sock and have it up on a website in 10 minutes for something that's going viral, I think that's huge. And that's not something a lot of people have the capability to do. And so that's definitely like the future of where my company is headed, I think. And then that along with, say, someone wants to upload a picture and have it on their socks. Like, there's very few things online that are like customized and personalized like that you're able to have in a timely manner that don't cost you an arm and a leg.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that I love how you look at what other people would perceive as problems and see them as opportunities. Has that always been the case for you?
It wasn't when I started, and even recently, I'd say probably in the past 2 years is really when I started to come around. And when you start looking at like some of the most successful people, like none of them were like, they didn't set out to start a business. They set out and created something that was a solution to a problem. And that's exactly what I did with the socks. I didn't know that at the time, but it got to a point where there was so much demand for it because I had created such a cool solution that it sort of turned into a business. Like I didn't set out to start a sock company. I started a sock company because I love the socks so much and people couldn't stop asking for them. Mm-hmm. And so really now when I start to approach problems, I like to think actually I'm constantly like actually looking for issues in the world just so you can go fix them or come up with solutions for them. And that is so challenging to find. It's like an endless game for me. Like my mind never stops thinking about that stuff.
So let me ask you this. When you're looking at the world, there are a lot of people out there, and especially now, where all they see are problems. How do you see the world? Like if we, outside of business, if we look at like politics, the environment, you're 18 and a lot of people are like storing up, guns, grub, and gold for the coming apocalypse. And like, they see the world as, oh my gosh, it's all bad. How do you see the world?
I think I see the world. I try to take the most positive side to it that I can, because I don't think there's really anything else you can do. Like I personally think there's only so much that we can control as like each individual humans. Mm-hmm. But the way I sort of think about it is like there's all these different things, and one of the most that someone pointed this out to me one time, and I don't know why it stuck with me, but like think about like the tiny little bolts that are like required on a freeway like overpass or something. Like no one ever thinks about that stuff, but just being able to like examine the world as all the little parts that make it up instead of like the huge issues, like being able to just break everything down. And like, so the concept there was like, well, what if you could invent a bolt or something that has some sort of benefit to the overpass, like anything like that, or provide some sort of structural benefit. Being able to break everything down around you into such small little parts is like super intriguing to me that it exists, because a lot of the time I think we just get caught up in like the big picture, and that's clearly important. But I also think there's something to be said for kind of taking a step back and being like, everything's going to be okay. Like just kind of enjoy all the little intricacies of life and what makes stuff up. And just not worry too much, I think.
What's a global problem that you'd love to be able to hack and solve?
Yeah. I mean, one of the big global issues is definitely the whole concept of just healthy environment and the whole recycling. I know I've got a bunch of friends that are like super interested in actually working on companies within the space, and it's super interesting to me just how it all works and how a lot of it is like just informing people, but informing them with the right stuff, because there's companies that are trying to malinform for like their own benefit, and it's a weird space, but that's definitely up there on the list of like, if I could fix anything, it would be that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally hear you. I think about, in the same vein, I think about Maui is like, I've traveled to, oh gosh, like 33 countries. And, you know, of all the places I've traveled, and I've gorgeous places like Cambodia and Bali and, you know, amazing places.
Yeah.
I love Maui. It's like when I go there, Brennan, I'm like, you know, and I love in this business environment, you can really work from anywhere. But so anyway, I know that, you know, in the oceans, there are like miles of like, you know, stuff that are just, you know, all congealed like islands of trash. And I'd love to be able to solve that issue. That would be like, what for me, one of the environmental things that'd be huge. So do you see like with HoopSwag making that move toward more conscious, like capitalism in that regard?
I'm not sure that is necessarily what will happen with HoopSwag. I think that's sort of a little bit on a different level. I'm not like, I never really saw those two connecting. Mm-hmm. But like I was saying, it's one of those things that I'm always like constantly thinking about, like creative solutions to. Mm-hmm. Not that it's a one and done solution, but sort of like, what can we do to sort of help prevent this and fix the issue? But no, I don't know that HoopSwag would ever necessarily be like too involved in that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I'll plant the seed for you now. You know, Patagonia did it, and hey, exactly. Socks made from plastic bottles. Just a thought, right? Everyone would be like, "Yeah, we heard that here."
Yeah.
So, what, like, you have an incredible mindset, and like, what do you read? What do you listen to? Who do you follow? Do you have some kind of ritual of like where you get your own personal inspiration?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of like, know how you have those moments that are like just breakthrough moments or like something clicks. Mm-hmm. For me, like growing up, that's always happened when I was exercising, and I'm not sure why. It just has. Like sometimes I'll legitimately be playing in the middle of a soccer game, and I'm like, wait, that's it. It clicked, and I'm not even trying to think about it. And so I definitely make sure like every day I usually end up running like 3 to 5 miles somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. It's just like one of those things that's like that's my place, is I go do that to relax. Like it just gets my head clear and sort of puts me in the right place. But in terms of like rituals, I'm not sure I have anything other than just I run and I try to eat healthy. I figured out that helps my brain out a ton. Whether or not I knew it 3 years ago, that's definitely been a big thing in the past 6 months. But in terms of like who I follow and what I read and that sort of thing, I try to read like a wide variety. I really, really enjoy, I don't actually read. I listen to audiobooks and I listen to podcasts, but I listen to a lot of stuff on just basic psychology and like how the human mind thinks, and sort of the little things that influence you that you might not actually know are influencing you. Like that stuff has always been super intriguing. And my mind moves really fast. So sometimes I get bored of something and I'm like, I'm done with this. Like that was sort of why school was boring for me, is I got bored after like 5 minutes and I wanted something else. So usually whatever's sort of intriguing to me, I sort of get on that topic and get really informed in that. And then I usually like listen to too much of it and then I get bored of it and I have to find something else. So this whole like learning is constantly going on, just not necessarily even related to business. Like I find learning about things that I might not know about and informing myself can sometimes like spark other ideas. Or also listening. There's this one podcast, I forget what it's called, but it basically just talks about all these ancient, like Greek and Roman communities and how they like functioned. And that stuff is super interesting to me, how like some of the same concepts that we are like just now developing were actually used back then. Mm-hmm. But they might not like get the credit they were for being as smart as they were. I don't know. It's really all over the place.
I was in Las Vegas several years ago, and Tony Hsieh was speaking, and I love Tony Hsieh. Like he's like right up there with like several entrepreneurs that, inspire me. And one of the things Tony said is every day he learns something new. So he might go on YouTube and learn about carburetors or whatever. And after I saw him, I was like, you know what? I find like I started reading books like The Art of War and, Think and Grow Rich and stuff at a very early age. But I love that philosophy. So like you, like every day I want to learn something new, and I'll just like go on a topic and go and go and go. And then it's like, okay, I've got to change it today. It's got to be something different. And I love that we live in an era where whether it's Mandarin or carburetors or whatever it is, that we have access to all of that, which is awesome. So I would say, you do have rituals. It's getting the run in. You're from Oregon. I think if you don't run, it's illegal there. You're, getting that run in, your diet, listening, learning. I mean, it's huge. Who do you admire in the entrepreneurial space?
So someone that I really admire, I'm totally blanking on his name right now, and I feel awful. But the guy who started Priceline, I've heard him speak 2 to 3 times now, and he's one of the most interesting dudes I have met or ever spoke. And it's that all because of that same approach he took, which was he never set out to start a company. It was he would go into different industries and he would find a problem and then he would go solve it. And by the time he was 50 or 60, he had people begging him to come solve problems for him. Mm. And he was never like necessarily a great business guy. He was just incredibly good at creative problem solving and then turning those into like actual solutions. Because a lot of people can problem solve, but there's a big difference between conceptually coming up with an idea and physically making it happen. And so just like watching him, he's probably 67 years old now, and he's still just going strong. Like he's like, my friends from the sports community are now asking me to help fix like this problem within the baseball thing. And so now like all these professional baseball teams are like, need this. And it's just so interesting to me how there's all these like simple problems that just require creative problem solving and not necessarily like I need to drop a business plan. I need to like go register with the state. It's solving a problem and helping people get that solution in their hands. And it's interesting because that concept is really how business works. And it's so simple, yet at the same time, it can like be so complex.
It's Jay Walker and Scott Case who started Priceline.
Okay, yeah, I think that's one of them.
I Googled it while we were talking.
I keep hearing him speak. Like I'm at all these events and I'm like, oh my God, he's here too. Like it's just so interesting.
The average person in business, especially when they're new, and you look at, you've already defied the odds with HoopSwag because 5 years, 50% of businesses are gone. Year 10, 90% are gone. And that doesn't include all the solopreneurs who dabble and then go back, right? They start a side hustle, go full time, and regardless of the kind of business it is, and then they go back to work, right? It doesn't include them, but it's more brick and mortars. So you've already defied the odds. And the average person kind of gets worked up when something happens, like manufacturing issue, employee issue, so many things that can happen, an unhappy customer, supply chain delivery, all that different stuff. How do you manage your state during the workday? Because I'm sure challenges arise. It just happens in business.
Oh, totally. And this was something that I definitely struggled with a lot growing up, as I was quite literally 14 years old, and you're still like maturing as a person too. And you're at 14, you're still pretty immature. So by the time I was 15, like having to sort of collect myself and be able to manage employees was definitely a very difficult task. And I owe a lot of credit to my parents, I think. My dad is a business owner as well. And so he's been a huge like inspiration and more of a mentor for me about how to handle these situations because I would have no idea how to. I mean, it's just something that kind of goes with learning. But I mean, now at this point where I am now, like you were saying, those things you just listed off, every single one of those, the first thing that popped in my head was like, wow, that's gone wrong, that's gone wrong, that's gone wrong. Like everything goes wrong. And the best way to deal with it is you kind of have to figure out where you are at the moment and just come to terms with you're not going back in the past and you have no control over that situation. So it's like, what can I do at this point to solve this problem? And then you got to get creative with it. Like right now, we're like 30 days late. These customs just held our packages randomly, and we're about to like run out of socks. So now we're like having to consider driving up to like Seattle today to go get these socks literally out of the port. But it's just a matter of, okay, I have an issue. How am I going to solve it? And on another note, like you were saying with the customer service stuff, I definitely like, it's hard getting really intense customer emails, like where people are like cussing you out and yelling at you because it's like it's your fault. And it's one of those things where you're like, I gotta take a step back and realize they are yelling into like a wall of a company. They're not yelling at me, whether or not it feels like it. It's sometimes very easy to take things personally. And like, I've had to just realize like, it's not personal. Like, I'm just gonna solve it like it's not personal. You resolve the issue, and usually at the end of the day, if you solve like the customer problem, they're totally happy. They just get like a little bit freaked out at first because they're afraid like someone's scamming them or something. But definitely being able to remove yourself as a person and like your feelings out of a situation has been extremely helpful. It's a very difficult thing to do, and I still have trouble doing that now. But if you're able to do that, it really is able to like help you calm down and just be like, okay, here's the problem. How are we going to solve this?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like sometimes even having been in business as long as I have, I take it so personally at times. And I have to remember like, and the other thing I've learned is hiring a really great person who's got a thick skin. And I just brought on a new person and she's like, it's okay. You be good cop. I'll be bad cop. I'll be bad cop all day long. And I'm like, thank you, God. Right. So it's like having those people who get it, because I think one of the fascinating things is, like you mentioned, is about human psychology. And when I went to college, I did a science degree in psychology because it was really the only thing that I was super passionate about. And I knew always in my heart I was going to be an entrepreneur. And I thought if I can master psychology, like that's more important than a balance sheet, because I can hire people and I can learn how to do those things. But psychology is fascinating. And when you look at the dynamic of companies and especially entrepreneurs, as entrepreneurs, we are all kind of similar. Like we like to take risks and we're creatives and stuff. It's about who we surround ourselves with. And what advice would you give to someone starting a business and they're in that place where they're going to start to hire people? Because you've hired your friends' moms, literally. And if you have a falling out with that friend and that mom is still working for you, it's like got to be weird, right? So what advice would you give?
Yeah, in my case, it's a little bit weird. Like, I literally have my friends' moms working for me. And so sometimes like, they'll have like drama, and it's just like, it's definitely like a little bit of a weird balance, right? Because you have work and then there's life, but as we all know, like those aren't always as easy to separate as they may seem. And I mean, the biggest thing I've learned is like hiring kids my age, because I do employ kids my age during Christmas, because they're just like, you need people in there to make socks. We will do anything to get these socks out. It's definitely a weird dynamic because you step inside of this warehouse and all of a sudden like, you're their boss, and it's not necessarily like a dynamic like, oh, I'll go do this and whatever. It's just there is that precedent set that like you're in charge. You step out and everyone's sort of on a level playing field again. Mm-hmm. And so it's really weird because you could sit next to the same person in English that 6 hours later you're supposed to be bossing them around. And it's definitely a weird dynamic, and I think the way I sort of dealt with it was like, you just have to be very good about separating them, but at the same time, you're still friends with those people, and those are still your mom's friends. And so it's okay to sort of blend that a little bit and not be like afraid and too scared to be like, hey, like a lot of people do also get a good sense of like, okay, this is work. We're going to get work done while we're at work. And outside of that, we're totally fine. Because some of my best friends have actually worked for me in like a factory. And so just being able to having that maturity to like be able to set those apart and know they're getting set apart. And it's definitely super difficult to do. Don't get me wrong. But being able to hire the right type of people too, you can usually tell like, is this person going to be able to handle the fact that they live 5 doors down from me? Because when you're running a local business, you aren't able to hire people that you don't know, because like in the town that I live in, it's so small, we know almost everyone. So just being able to set those apart is extremely difficult, but I think the right people are able to do it, and that's sort of what's enabled me to be able to do that.
I love that. It's compartmentalizing. It's so tough, right? Because this, as you know, like I write about work-life balance, I speak on work-life balance, and I keep saying to, when people are like, "Well, why should we hire you to come in and speak?" And I'm like, because if you have no work-life balance, you're going to lose your best people. Like, there's no question. And being able to understand what the commodity is, and there's the whole like you're Gen Z, and Connor Blakely is like my little brother. And so Connor and I have these conversations how like Gen Z and Gen X are very similar. Millennials, their commodity is work-life balance. They'd rather have, less money, more work-life balance. But what I find with Gen Z, Gen X, the balance is still important, but there's just a different mindset. So thank you for talking about that, because it's huge. Business is always on our minds, but being able to compartmentalize and shift roles is huge. I want to shift gears just for a moment, because in addition to HoopSwag, massively successful company that will overcome the supply chain issue today. I get it. I truly do get it. You also are like an Instagram expert, and you manage several people's accounts, and recently you've started to manage my account, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm not afraid to tell anyone any of my amazing secrets I have. So, let's talk about Instagram for a moment. I observe there are a lot of people right now in their 50s who are actually moving to Instagram as a medium. Why do you think Instagram is so important right now? And what are your, just a few quick strategies for someone looking to up their Instagram game?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see all the people migrating to Instagram as they've been taking features from other apps that have worked well and implementing it into theirs. And so they've been basically because the social scene for media platforms has been interesting. I remember in 2015 wondering what direction we're going to head in. Is Snapchat going to take off? Is Twitter going to have a little bit of a comeback? Or because everyone's kind of even at that point. And what's been really interesting to watch is even my mom's friends are going back on Instagram now, and they all have these little tight knit communities with each other. And most of them, it's funny, if you ask them, they're not even 100% sure how to use it, but they're on Instagram because their friend is on Instagram, which 5 years ago would have been so weird to think about, that all these middle-aged women and men are getting back on Instagram, something that a bunch of kids are using. But no, so a few strategies to grow. I mean, number one is just being part of a community that's growing, whether that's commenting on people's pictures, and not just commenting wow, this is cute, but commenting meaningful things that provide some sort of value or insight to them. That's number one, definitely. Number two is posting somewhat interesting content. So when you really think about how Instagram functions, at the soul and at the core of it, it functions around content. And you can do all the amount of hashtags you want and tag all the people that you want. But what I found over using it for 4 or 5 years is if your content's good, it's going to do well and your account will grow. And it's not like I've derived that from huge numbers of statistics. It's just been, I've posted probably 5,000 times with different creatives, and it's a constant testing process. You never know what's going to do well. But when you do get one of those creatives or pictures and caption combos that hits, it really works, and you don't go viral, but it gets your name out there, and people start to follow you, and you start to become more engaged with people. And another huge thing that I think is one of the coolest features that I think everyone kind of takes for granted is the fact that you can DM people. 10 years ago, imagine trying to reach anyone in the world. You'd have to have their email, their phone number, whatever it was. And now you can literally go online, search their Instagram, and be able to send them a message that they'll most likely end up reading. That concept is so interesting to me, that you literally can reach anyone in the world. And 10 years ago, you couldn't do that. And so being able to do that and say you have a really good idea or some sort of insight or someone that you want to introduce to someone, you're able to do that with complete strangers online now. And so that's been super interesting, meeting people through Instagram message DMs. You're able to build actual meaningful relationships that could prosper into something for business, for personal, whatever it may be. Just building this community and engagement around your account and just being authentic about it. I think at the end of the day, you kind of hit on those three things along with having quality content, and you're going to be set.
I love that. And okay, so one quick question, because this is like I almost like the fans. It's like they channel their questions through me. I'm just kidding, no, but I can think like a fan. That so how much time? If say someone's like, let's say someone is growing a business, they have some employees, and they're like, oh my gosh, Brennan, okay, I need to be on Instagram. How much time each day would you spend, or is it kind of like just here and there, or should someone dedicate a certain amount of time every day?
Yeah, it's definitely like it's not like you need to do like 15 minutes a day. It's more sort of like, what do you want to get out of it? Because obviously the more time you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. But it's not one of those things that I think you have to over stress about. But I definitely think like if there's one thing you do every day, it's like put out a piece of content. Just be consistent about it. It doesn't even have to be every day. It could be once every week, like, or twice every week, whatever it is. Just be consistent with it, because people will start to find your account and be like, wow, this is cool. And then all of a sudden you stop posting, and then it's like, well, now what? Like, where'd they go? People actually do recognize that stuff because it's consistently in their feed. But in terms of like, I need to do X amount per day, I don't necessarily think it's that. I think being consistent with it is important, whether that's staying up to date with other people. Like, that's what I use Instagram most for, is just staying up to date with other people, and helping me sort of be in the know of what's happening on the whole like social platform. But I mean, it's really what you put into it, you're going to get out of it. Like, if you're a small business, you barely have any time already. But if you could do 15, 20, 30 minutes a day of just truly engaging with people, then I definitely, it's going to be a big plus. And one of the coolest things I've seen actually is like when customers send you pictures, if you just take the time to like write them a message back, or if someone says, wow, I really like your product, I bought this and XYZ, like my kid loves it. If you just take the time to write them back, like that goes so far. People are always like begging for actual company and people from the company, not just this like company profile image, but like people from a company, like some sort of personal anecdote with it. Like I respond to every Snapchat that I get from my company, because a lot of the people that are my demographic are like ages 10 through 18. And you'll be amazed at how many of them are like, oh my God, you responded, like you're an actual person. And it's so cool to see that, because there's a lot of companies, most companies, I don't think that's like a priority for them.
Yeah, and we are seeing two bigger companies, like you and I were kind of talking about Skype and the forced update. And, I tweeted at Skype. Like, if I have an issue with a company or even a positive experience, I use Twitter for that. A lot of the big companies have reps who will, interact on Twitter. And Skype got back to me. It was cool. And I think that it is so important. And if you own a company and it can't be you all the time doing it, it does mean a lot if it's you. And I have 3 businesses. So I work really hard to make sure I do a level of client engagement every single day, and know where your clients are. A lot of like in my digital marketing company, a lot of my clients are on LinkedIn and they're on Facebook. So that's where I need to be, right? So it's just that knowing. All right, we have time for truth or truth. You get to ask me any question that you want. Which is like, so many of the fans are like, I love truth or truth, right? Because you never know what people are going to ask me. So go for it.
Yeah. Okay. I'd think long and hard about this. So, number 1, what is your biggest fear for yourself, and also like generally going forward in the future?
Is that a personal fear, or is it like business?
Personal, world, global, whatever. Like, is there something you really worry about for the future?
Like you, I try not to worry, because when I'm in worry, I'm not in faith. So if there was anything that ever sits in the back of my mind, it's my kids, right? Like, I have 5 kids, and I'm like, every time they go out the door, it's always in the back of my mind. I think that would be the thing. In business, I constantly am meditating on how can I add more value? How can I add more value? Like right now we're working on disrupting the digital marketing space and giving away stuff for free that people pay for at other agencies. And I'm like, how can I add more value? So it's not a worry, but it's just that constant thing that's in the back of my mind.
No, that's totally fair.
Okay. I get to ask you one now. That's fun.
Okay.
Not related to any topic that we've had. All right. So I had Jesse Itzler on the show. He's turning 50, Marquis Jet, Jesse James, the rapper, married to Sarah Blakely, Zico Coconut Water, so accomplished. And this year he's like, he has one expert a week coming to live at his house for 50 weeks in different things. So if you could learn something, and it's not about business or anything, but it's like a total passion thing that you could just master, what would that thing be?
Oh, this is an easy answer. I've always wanted to learn how to cook. I've always wanted to know how to be able to cook. I feel like that would be the most useful skill to have ever. Just be able to whip up good food and healthy food.
Okay. And do you have a cuisine preference that you'd like to learn how to make?
That's tough. I'd probably say Italian food. I don't know why. I love Italian food. But if I was able to make quality Italian food, my life would be set.
All right. So here's my offer for you in front of everyone in the world. So one of my best friends is from Italy, and he's in his 70s, and he's the kind of guy that he's he's cooking in the kitchen and he's singing these old Italian songs. So here's the thing. We will make a plan within the next year. When you come to Phoenix, I'll get Bruno to come, and he'll teach you how to make a risotto and all this stuff that you love to make, and we'll do it in my kitchen. How does that sound? We'll make that happen.
Sit down. That's going to happen.
Because if you're going to learn Italian cooking, you should learn from an Italian.
No, I'm excited now. I'm going to hold you to that.
I don't make promises that I don't keep. In business, sometimes I make a promise and it's not in the same timeline I'd like that to happen, but I don't make promises I don't keep. So I'm 100% committed to that. And just let me know when you're going to be here. I will message him. He's retired, so he's flexible. He doesn't really like to come in the summer when it's super hot, but 10 months out of the year, yes. So we'll make that happen, I promise. Well, Brennan, it's been great to have you. And I know Brennan has to go solve a supply chain issue. So we've got to, it's been amazing to have you. Check out HoopSwag, his business. It's awesome. Brennan, I promise, is going to be, someone, 10 years from now that all the listeners will be investing in your companies and making a fortune in the stock market. I just know it. So thanks for being here, Brennan. You are amazing. And to all of the listeners, wherever you are in the world, just know that I truly love you guys. I appreciate you. If this show has been great for you, we would love a 5-star review. And I would love anyone who has a business, or someone even in high school, my son, AJ, I'll be sharing this show with him, that anyone who can benefit, we would love for you to give us shouts out on social media and definitely share it. So with that, God bless, go rock your day. Thanks again, Brennan, for being here, and I will see you guys next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another epic episode of the Susan Sly Project. For more tips, strategies, and ideas, visit www.susansly.com.